Okay, next, looking at our doctrine of human beings or doctrine of man, and a little explanation here. Again, while we'll look at, what are human beings, one of the reasons we call this doctrine of man is because all human beings come from the first man, Adam. So in effect, we're using that interchangeably only in the effect that, again, that all the entire human race came from one man. So that's why it's sometimes called the doctrine of man, and I'll go back and forth referring to it different ways here. But the first question or issue that we really address here is, what is the constitution of human beings? What are we made of? Okay, and in this case, it's going to be important as we go through this to bring back a lot of the definitions and the distinctions that I mentioned in Essential Christian Doctrine 1. So again, I'm not going to restate or reteach these, but for example, I went through about 5 different kinds of distinctions. For example, what's a real or essential distinction, a formal distinction, a modal distinction, a distinction by reason of analysis, and a distinction by reasoning. So again, I'm going to refer to those and use those again as we go through this material, but also our metaphysical language to describe persons and substance. Again, cover that in Essential Christian Doctrine 1, but what I'm going to use terms like substance and essence and subsistence or mode of subsistence, okay? All of this is going to be important when we start talking about persons, because what is a person? A person is an individual or specific instance of a rational essence, okay? Individual or specific instance of a rational essence. So ultimately, we looked at, for example, what's a divine person? What's an angelic person? What is a human person? Well, we can divide essences into 2 kinds, non-rational and rational. Either the type or genus of thing is the kind of thing that would have properties which would include intellectual, volitional, and affective powers, okay, the ability to think, choose, and feel, or it doesn't, okay? So you have the divine essence, which again has the capacities for thought and choice and feeling, same with angels, same with human beings. So a specific instance of that essence is a person, a subsistent of a rational essence. So how does that work? And again, to recap what I stated in Essential Christian Doctrine 1, if you have a specific instance of a human essence, the fact is what you have is a self-aware being. Why are you self-aware? Well, for multiple reasons, because arguably you get first-person introspective awareness by the intellect reflexively bending back on the subject and recognizing it as an object. So that's one sense where you are self-aware. And then you are also aware, using your intellect, of other types of deliberations of what's good, true, beautiful, and other types of objects. So the human intellect, arguably along with angelic intellects and so forth, are going to be self-aware as created, finite, contingent, mutable kinds of things, because our intellect bends back on ourself as the subject. Hence, we're self-aware persons or self-aware beings. So on that, again, so we talk about human nature or the human substance. Now we're going to look at what does it mean to be fully human, because a human person, again, is a specific instance of the human essence, which is a specific instance of the rational essence. So let's take a look now at a couple of texts and start looking at what does the Bible say about what the human constitution is. So on or about page 6 of your anthropology handout, there's a section that starts monism, dichotomy, and trichotomy. Now, monism, which is not really an evangelical view, is the idea that human nature, okay, comprises one substance or includes one substance, and that's really the physical substance. And in this case, what you've got is a type of physicalism where we are nothing more than our bodies. And a quick overview of this, why it's problematic, is that one, we'll see it's just completely unbiblical. The Bible talks about us minimally in substance dualism kinds of terms. in the sense that we are more than our bodies. We're more than our physical bodies. We have a soul, spirit, and so on and so forth that's not physical. And our soul continues to exist as a distinct substance from the body, apart from the body at death. So again, here are some of the reasons why, again, we could go through a lot of the problems with this, but I just want to mention a couple at this point. Problem with monism is this. We start thinking about praise and blame. I mentioned this. We talked about the doctrine of the divine decree in Essential Christian Doctrine 1. But again, human freedom is essential to the concept of punishment and reward. It's really meaningless to talk about rewarding someone for good works or obedience or punishing someone for bad works unless it's freely done. And so what's interesting in this case, we want to raise the concept of what is called diachronic identity, because when we look at being rewarded or being punished, think about death and resurrection. If you have somebody who dies today and you're nothing more than your body, and then, let's say 1,000 years from now, whatever it happens to be, God makes a copy of you who died today. The question is that really you, or is that a copy of you? And why should that person who simply is created out of, using particles to look like you, why should that person be rewarded for obedience or faith in Christ? There's no continuity of personhood or identity. So how can that person, as the act agent, properly be rewarded? And also conversely, think about the second resurrection when the wicked are resurrected. Well, again, if wicked person A dies and 2,000 years from now, you have a copy of person A that is resurrected, and now you're standing before this person standing before the great white throne saying, enter into your punishment now. And the guy say, hey, wait a minute, it's not me, it's the other guy. Because when you start thinking about monism, it raises problems for eternal reward and punishment. It raises problems for continuity of identity. It also raises problems for the concept of freedom and freedom of the will, because if you're nothing more than your body, what is the ground of self-moved actions? And again, we'll cover this in some of our discussions, but all you really got at this point is really hard determinism and a hard physicalism, where you have a bunch of external physical stuff that's moving on your physical body and causing it to do things. So this is why, frankly, in the history of Christianity, monism has been rejected and will continue to be rejected. Now, the two views that people in the church have disagreed on, I'll just do a brief overview on this. It's either dichotomy, where you are literally cutting the human constitution into two distinct substances, or trichotomy, where you're cutting the human constitution into three distinct substances. And some of the evidence here that I list for dichotomy and trichotomy, starting on or about page 7. Take a look there. First of all, we talk about the soul or the spirit. Now as compared to the body. So the body is basically, we think about the exemplification of your physical substance, okay? It's physical substance exemplified by the body, all right? But we're more than our bodies. We have another substance that survives the death of the body, alternately called the soul or the spirit. Now, what's important is, again, a dichotomist says the soul and the spirit ultimately are the same spiritual substance, but you're formally distinguishing, for example, soul in the New Testament, psyche, where we get the word psychology from. Really what you're emphasizing with soul is personhood, okay? So with personhood, now we have this spiritual substance, which is the ground of the rational faculties, hence the ground of personhood. And as a person, you survive the death of the body. And there, Luke 16, 19 to 31, the rich man and Lazarus. We look at, again, Saul and the medium at Endor with Samuel the prophet coming back to have a nice chat. Moses and Elijah on the Mount of Transfiguration. The fact is that we survive as persons after death. And that's the ground of it. So Again, a dichotomist would formally distinguish within the same substance, spiritual substance. The soul would emphasize personhood, where the word spirit, which is the Greek word, again, the Greek is pneuma, which is also translated breath or wind, emphasizes its non-physicality or intangibility or non-corporealness, which is ultimately non-physicalness, yet it's still a substance that can act and cause things to happen. So again, that's a dichotomist. We cut the human constitution into two substances, one physical one spiritual one, and we formally distinguish soul and spirit in the non-physical substance. A trichotomist, just what it sounds like, they tri-cut. They cut the human constitution into three distinct substances: the physical substance exemplified by the body, a spiritual substance, which is the soul itself, and then there's a second, spiritual substance, the spirit. Those three substances come together, and that makes a full human being and human constitution. So this is the concept of dichotomy and trichotomy. In the next video, I want to give just a couple of quick proofs for the existence of the soul and the spirit. Why? Because again, in some neo-evangelical circles, this monism is creeping into our churches and our thought. So you're going to have some biblical evidence for arguing for this. So, and again, in the next segment, I'll talk about biblical evidence for the soul and the spirit. Thanks.